go ahead and get started because, as always, we end up running out of time because we have such great conversations, and I definitely appreciate everyone joining this morning. You know, one of the things that we set out to do is to really create a forum by which we continue to have open dialogue and conversations as it relates to DE&I. And, you know, in that search of finding companies and entities that are doing things just in their own way to support DEI, I came across a longtime partner of mine, Consumer Track. I don't know if many of you know Consumer Track as a business, but they've been around really forever. I mean, it's definitely been, what, 20 plus years. And, you know, I've always been fascinated based on how Consumer Track built such a diverse business. And it was extremely different than any other company I'd ever seen. I mean, you can go to their About Us, and it looks different than most companies that you see in our space. So, you know, I reached out to Consumer Track and said, look, there was an article that came out in 2017 in Los Angeles that really highlighted their diversity. And I just realized they have to be doing something different that others just are not doing or not recognizing through their hiring practices and the development of their company. So at that time is when I met Mary Lou Torres, and Mary Lou is on with us right now. And, you know, we had a great conversation just about all that Consumer Track is doing. And it just made a lot of sense for Consumer Track to share with this group what they're doing, you know, how they are embracing and supporting diversity initiatives. And, you know, with that, I would like to turn it over to Mary Lou.
Awesome, Matt. Thank you so much for the great intro about Consumer Track. I'm even more pumped about our company more than ever after just hearing that intro myself. So that's great. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I have a short little deck that I'll share with all of you, all of but 19 slides. I know you're all excited to see it just as much as I am. So let me go ahead and share my screen. So give me 1 second. Oh, I can't share my screen. Oh, there we go. Thank you.
And if of course you want to send over that posting, sure, we could take a look at it.
Let me know once you're able to see my screen. Just going to take a minute.
Great, we can see it now.
Okay. All right, I'll go ahead and just start the slideshow. All right, can everybody see that?
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. All right, so diversity, equity, inclusion at Consumer Track. It is, I would say, not necessarily different, but we really try to tailor it to our team, and we try to hit as much as possible within the organization, whether it's weaving it into the structure, weaving it into everything that we do. That's kind of how we think about diversity, equity, inclusion. It's no longer checking off boxes for us as an organization. So I'll go ahead and get started and share a little bit more about that. Let me know if it's moving. Is it moving?
It's not showing up in presentation mode. If
Huh. Okay.
Possible that you're seeing it on your screen where it's reversed, where we're seeing your view.
Hold on. Let me just do this 1 second.
As you tab through the slides, we can see the slides.
Yeah, we can.
Okay. All right. So I'm just going to go. Give me 1 second. Is that better?
I think we can see your slides if you'd like to go ahead. I mean, as it was before, we were just seeing the panel also to the left, but we're good.
Okay. Perfect. Okay. So just a quick introduction of myself. I am the Director of Talent Transformation at Consumer Track. This is my second role in my career that has focused on DEI strategies and initiatives. And one of the things that I always like to share is why DEI is important to me. I'm really passionate about creating an environment where people feel like they're where they truly belong. I like to create workplaces where people can see a reflection of themselves anywhere within an organization. And I also like to create spaces where people can truly connect and share their perspectives, stories, ideas, learn from one another, and feel safe to do so. That's kind of my philosophy as I build strategies or initiatives at any other company. So what I'm going to go over today is just the CTI roadmap. Where did we begin? What are we currently doing? And where are we headed as an organization? And then I'll leave some time at the end for any questions or questions at the end. So where did it all begin? So part of what we were doing, even prior to me getting here, was making sure that we were living and breathing our culture of change and innovation. So we weren't even just thinking about diversity, we were just thinking about culture in general. And so as a tech organization, we wanted to hire the best talent and have the most diverse team members with different perspectives and backgrounds, because we knew if we operated that way, we thought that way, we would be able to come up with the most innovative solutions, and we would be able to adapt to the ever-changing technologies and markets that we're in, right? It's never stagnant in what we do in digital media, marketing, and finance. And so we had to get smart about how we're approaching recruiting, how we're approaching our culture. And so it actually just culminated and ended up with the diverse group that we had, even in 2017. So in 2017, a quick snapshot, 50% of our leaders were female and 50% of our leaders were male. Our employees, our snapshot there, 62.3% were female and 37% were male. That was an opposite of anything that was happening in technology and is still continuing to happen in technology. We were just getting smarter about just hiring the best people possible and broadening our minds on backgrounds, perspectives, and experiences in general to get to the place that we're at today. We also looked at our core values. Our core values are based on the 4 agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. And these agreements were actually teaching us how to work more effectively with a diverse group of people. So I'm just listing 2 here of the 4 agreements, but for us, like one of our core values is don't make assumptions. And that really helps remind our team members that coworkers may be approaching something from a completely different perspective and therefore coming to a different conclusion. So deepen that conversation, ask more questions, and just don't make assumptions. Additionally, it's be impeccable with your word. Out of all of these diverse perspectives come together, we have to over communicate to make sure that everyone is aligned. So we want to just be more open, more transparent in our conversations. So those 2 things alone, or those combination of things, really, pushed us to where we are today and really starting to talk about diversity, equity, inclusion, even in 2017 when it wasn't as at a height as it is today. Also, we implemented a DEI committee to really champion a culture of inclusion. So these are just some of my committee team members as of right now. They come from all different groups, different teams, different backgrounds, and together we developed a mission, guidelines, even subcommittees to provide a focus and vision for our strategies and initiatives that we were going to roll out going forward.
Excuse me, Mary Lou.
Mary, yeah, I was just about to say, I think your slides aren't showing up.
Uh-oh. Let me just exit out of that. I don't know why that's not happening. So strange. All right, let me go to reading view and let's see if this gets better.
There we go.
Is that better?
Perfect.
Okay. Perfect. All right. So this is the committee that I have, and we've been working together on all things DEI. It's all voluntary on their part, and they're thoroughly engaged, right? This is part of their passion, and we were inviting people from all teams across the organization to join, and they've been doing things that they're most passionate about. So our content team members, they're actually part of our communications team, right? And they're writing the internal and external communications for us. I've got team members who are focusing on strategy, and they're part of our operations and business analysis and strategy teams, right? So we're trying to make sure that we're combining their strengths and their skills and their interests in this DEI committee that we do have. So what are we currently doing? Right? We created a commitment statement, and that was important because, again, like I said, we wanted to weave this into every part of our organization and make sure that we had a focus for the organization, right? And a true intent to commit to diversity, equity, inclusion. I think it's on the site. I don't want to go through it. It's 3 paragraphs long. You can definitely check that out, but it really was meaningful to us to have that statement roll out to the entire organization and say, this is what we're committing to. Right. We also, as a committee, developed a full strategy plan with initiatives, activities, and learnings. And we focus on the following areas. We said, okay, let's build awareness. Let's focus on recruiting and hiring. Let's focus on inclusion and retention. And then also accountability. Accountability is the most important part of this because we want to look at numbers and metrics to see how we're doing as an organization, because data is really going to give you the most amount of insights as an organization. So that's actually something that we're working towards as of right now. But I've done that at other organizations, and it's helped us to build a roadmap on trainings and development that was really bespoke to the organization and really hit, the underrepresented groups when we were recruiting, and we knew where to go. But just really an overall great strategy when you are, building one out. You've got to look at your metrics and accountability metrics. So for us, what we've done so far, building awareness, we actually are in the process of developing an assessment to uncover knowledge, comfort level, topics of interest, and gaps of our leaders, because we want this to start from the top. Right? We want our leaders to be thoroughly engaged, thoroughly aware of their own gaps in learning of diversity, equity, inclusion, and also where they want to support and where they're thoroughly engaged. And so we're doing that right now, and we're going to do one-on-one interviews with our leaders to get a better sense of this today. Right. And again, this is going to help us create trainings for the future as we continue to build our training and development plan for our team members and our leaders. We've also been executing team trainings on things like unconscious and implicit bias, right? Because these are things that, we've learned throughout the years and things that team members might not know. Leaders, our interns, we make sure that they know what unconscious and implicit bias is. So that way, at least they first are aware, we're meeting them where they're at, and then we can help them to continue to grow within the organization and their DEI journey. So in recruiting and hiring, we've done a couple of things. One of the things that I didn't list here, I forgot to list, is we've built performance profiles for each of our roles. And that's been important because we're looking at what a candidate can bring to the table and what they can achieve, and look at their previous performance and base our hiring on that. Right? Versus anything else, any unconscious bias, that we're trying to remove as many things as possible. And so we can line up that performance profile and say, look, this person can come to the table, can do this job, has achieved these results before. That's what we're going to focus on as an organization. So that's one of the big things that we did this year. We're also focusing on developing inclusive employer branding. So we've neutralized our job ads. We're utilizing words that are going to appeal to all audiences, right? We're balancing masculine and feminine themed words. I know that a lot of times there are words out there like rock star and ninjas, right? And those don't necessarily appeal to the masses. And so we want to make sure as we're creating our job descriptions that we're being mindful of that. We're using universal wording versus corporate jargon, so it's user-friendly, it's easier to understand, and we're limiting job requirements to must-haves or preferred, right? Because we just want to make sure that they don't necessarily have too many. We're blocking out too many people out of our candidate pool. We're also highlighting relevant job perks and our job ads to illustrate our inclusive environment, right? So we're including things about leave, we're including things about flexible work arrangements and workspaces and being able to work from home, right? That's to help engage as many people and within the audience as possible. Additionally, in recruiting and hiring, we've been networking with BIPOC colleges, universities, and organizations. So we've already created our target list to promote consumer track and our opportunities at colleges, universities, and organizations. So whether it's a historically Black college or a nonprofit organization like UNCF or Black Girls Code, we've been creating our list and partnering up with them to say, hey, we're going to share our opportunities with your graduates, with your participants in your programs, your students, or your team members, as of today, because we want to share with as many people as possible our opportunities for career development and career growth. We've also developed a list of diversity job sites and non-traditional sourcing sites as well too, for us to continue to post on. It's kind of our go-to list. So things like diversity.com, Career Contessa, which is your millennial female, iHispano, HBCU Connect for historically Black colleges, Ability Jobs for those who may have disabilities, right? Also vet jobs for veterans that are, coming out of the military and moving into civilian life, or Campus Pride for LGBTQIA+, right? Candidates, places that they go and they might go to for job opportunities. We're also posting there for visibility and awareness of our organization and how inclusive we are. We're also looking at non-traditional sites too. We're looking at Slack communities. Our hiring managers are actually looking at all of the Slack communities they're a part of, and they're sharing the opportunities there. That's one thing that I think a lot of people miss, is those Slack communities out there. So if you're a part of one, I always say just share your opportunities there. I think everyone is looking for new opportunities at this point. It's, I think, what we're calling the Great Resignation, right? People are looking for those new opportunities right now. So this is the best time to share those in the Slack communities outside of your Slack community within work. We're also utilizing things like GitHub as well too, to reach out or to candidates there as well too, or find candidates there. We're tracking and measuring any existing hiring biases. So we're reviewing our data in our ATS and HRIS. So we're looking at our candidate pipelines, we're looking at our current employee landscape, and also our system. When I say system, we're also looking at promotions that are happening within the business, right? So we're looking at age, gender, race, ethnicity, education, disability, military service, just to make sure that we're not falling into any pits there. Right, looking at the numbers, because the numbers are going to give us the insights that we need. We've also updated our DEI compliance survey and compliance survey to reflect current terms to be as inclusive as possible, right? So utilizing terms like non-binary as a selection when we are asking for information on DEI as part of our voluntary or compliance survey. We've also focused on, like I'd mentioned, inclusion and retention to maintain a culture of DEI. So we've developed an inclusive event calendar and communication channels to celebrate diverse cultures throughout the year. So we've done full-scale events, and for us, that's Lunch and Learns. I think Myrna is here, and Myrna was actually part of our Lunch and Learn for Women's History Month. But we do have Lunch and Learns to create these open forums and spaces for our teams to learn from different speakers across different industries and different backgrounds. We've also had internal communication via email and Slack communication as well. We do interactive events. We do philanthropic support events. So whether it's donation drives, participating in volunteer opportunities, we try to tie it to the month that we're supporting, or the quarter we have some initiatives that we're supporting. We also create our own Zoom backgrounds to celebrate these months, right? Our teams love it. So the smallest way, if they're not sure how to participate, even the Zoom background alone that we created is already a big plus, right? They're aware of the month, they know what's going on, and it might even push them to do some research or look through some of the resources that we're sharing, just because they've been engaged with those Zoom backgrounds. But so far, we've celebrated Black History Month, Women's History Month, Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month, Pride Month. We're going into National Hispanic Heritage Month in September, October, and then National Native American Heritage Month as well too in November. We also do smaller engagement events throughout the year. So for us, like, we know, okay, we don't want to overload people with frequency, right? If we celebrate a little bit too much and we've got other engagements going on, they might get a little fatigued. And so we try to do smaller engagements for other events throughout the year. So let's say, for example, Lunar New Year. We shared a YouTube video on Lunar New Year and what that is, and the different cultures that do celebrate Lunar New Year. We also post things in the Slack channel and asking them and engaging them to share their photos and their traditions from Lunar New Year. Lots of engagement, lots of excitement, lots of learning from one another. And that means we didn't even have to share any additional information. Our team is learning from each other. Things like Autism Awareness Day, we did an informational email on neurodiversity, sharing what that is, because a lot of people don't know what neurodiversity is. And we also created a Zoom background for Autism Awareness Day, and everybody used it for the entire week. We also utilized days that you wouldn't think of, like Earth Day. I'll show you the email that we sent out. It was an informational email tying DEI to Earth Day and the resources that they could utilize to learn more about it. And then we tried creative ways too, right? For Juneteenth, one of our team members actually created a poem on Juneteenth, and we shared that with the team. So we're just trying to find different ways to engage our team to keep it fresh, so that way they continue to look forward to our emails instead of just hitting that delete or archiving that immediately. So these are some of the events and flyers that we've done communication-wise. You can see for Women's History Month, we did things like themes for the week, powerful moments in history, influential women, a week of uplifting and education week. So we had different themes for the week and engaged our team in communications that way. And that was super helpful for our committee to create those communications as well, knowing that they had the theme for the week as well too. Okay. And then you can see also we've had things in the newsletter to share about the DEI events, just to keep everybody informed or remind people of the different things that we're supporting or the things that we're doing as an organization as well too. We even had a virtual meditation event for Black History Month. A lot of things were happening in the world, and for Black History Month, we wanted a moment where people could meditate and relax and just focus for a minute, right? And focus on just themselves. And we picked what's the word that I'm looking for? A Black business to support as well too. So we tried to tie it in as much as possible in order to get as much insight into that month and provide as much awareness to that month as possible. So I'll send this out to everyone. I know this is very small text as you're probably reading this as of right now, but this was our Earth Day email. And so we talked about, climate change impacting some of the most vulnerable, communities on our planet. We shared some ways to build awareness, volunteer out in these communities that are impacted the most when it comes to, their environment, and then also provided some additional resources like different influencers or different subject matter experts in the field of Earth Day and diversity, equity, and inclusion. And then also we provided a link to the Earth Day mini film festival, sharing more information about diversity, equity, inclusion when it comes to Earth Day. And then at the end, we always tie it to some type of engagement. So we do have a Slack channel so they can share their thoughts, ideas, and photos from their volunteer opportunities or things that they've learned to keep everyone else engaged. And like I said, continuing to learn from one another. We also are, creating a real resource library right now. We're finalizing everything, but we're sharing recommendations on books, websites, courses, blogs, articles, movies that speak to the team's interests, but also fosters continuous learning and awareness in different areas and categories. I can share that with everyone. It's a full list once it's been finalized, so that way you can utilize that and share that with your teams as well too, and adapt it to what things that your team might be interested in. And like I said, we've created multiple channels to communicate the DEI journey and everyone's DEI journey. So we've got a specific Slack channel, which is #celebratingDEI. We've been utilizing our newsletters to share more information. We've got a Confluence page or a wiki page internally, so that way people can go to it to learn more about what's going on, what's happening in the DEI world. And then we're also utilizing our social media like Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn to share what we've been doing to really inspire other companies to do so, because we want other companies to be doing the same within their organization when it comes to diversity, equity, inclusion. So that's what we were doing, where we're headed. We know that there is still a lot of work to be done in each of our focused areas. So for building awareness, we're building out more trainings on allyship, cultural humility, bystander training, but we're also digging into more leader-specific activities and training, like unconscious bias when it comes to hiring, firing, promotions, and in this assignments. And when it comes to recruiting and hiring, we're trying to increase our diversity in our visual content. We're hoping to implement blind resumes, right? To again, eliminate any type of bias that we can. We're also trying to implement the two in a pool effect. I'll go ahead and share that link. It's from the Harvard Business Review. And it basically talks about if you put a minimum of 2 candidates that are from a diverse background, you're more likely to, of course, hire diverse candidates. So I'll share the link about that too. I don't want to go into too much depth about that, but that was really effective in my last role at Princess Polly, which is an e-commerce from Australia. And so we had a lack of diversity. So us inserting that tool in a pool effect really changed the game for us in terms of building a more diverse team. When it comes to inclusion and retention, we're building out quarterly meetings with our leadership so they know what's going on. They can share more about what's going on with their team. They're going to be more inclusive in general in terms of their knowledge. So we're just trying to keep that up with our teams. And then also we're trying to build out employee resource groups as we continue to grow. Lastly, what I talked about was accountability. Right now, we're in the process of developing a dashboard with DEI metrics to share internally and externally regularly, just based on the points and metrics that I shared earlier. We're going to utilize all these metrics to measure our efforts in order to provide the best initiatives that fit our team. And then lastly, biannual surveys and just making sure that we're getting feedback from our team when it comes to, how they're feeling about diversity, equity, inclusion. Are we hosting the right events? Are these events important to them? And is this the things that they're excited about as well too. All right, I know that was a lot to share. I'll stop there for questions and pause there for questions that anyone has.
I have a lot of questions. I'll try to just ask one and then give somebody else a chance. Sorry, where's it at? The language on the job postings, that's new to me. I've never, like a lot of this as I'm learning, I've never even considered that to be a problem. How do you know? Like, is there like a Hemingway app, that tells you like it's feminine or masculine, or is it just training internally?
Yeah, so there are tools out there. The name is escaping me, and I can share that in my post takeaway email and list of tools. But there are actual platforms that are looking at your words and what you're utilizing, and actually offer up different types of words instead to neutralize it. And the name of the platform that I've used is escaping me as of right now, but it does exist. That's
great. Mm-hmm. I'll sneak in another one since it was such a quick response. With blind resumes, when I was doing all of our hiring way back when, I would cut the tops of resumes off. Is that essentially the idea? It's just okay, because I remember I would judge people based on a Hotmail versus a Gmail email account. I'd be like, I don't know about this AOL Roadrunner, user. Right. So definitely could see how that would help. And then lastly, how are you tracking? Is it just surveying and polling the company? Are there systems out there? Because that's been something I've been interested in. It's just because I feel like we have a diverse group. I know our executive leadership is a bunch of white guys, and that's something I'm working on and thinking about. But most of our VPs are women. We have I think a good percentage of Blacks, Hispanics, other minorities, but I don't know, I'm just going off of kind of gut. I always worried about releasing a big survey that some people aren't going to want to do or won't do, and then you have skewed data, or is it just up to HR to kind of literally look at people and tag them internally?
Yeah, we've been using our HRIS system. So we've been utilizing ADP and just downloading the information from there that our team has been inputting. So that way we can see some of this information already. And then I'll look at it by different cuts, like I mentioned, like promotions, current hires, folks that have exited. So that way I have, you know, different insights from that data as well too. And then I download the information from our applicant tracking system when it comes to the reporting on who our candidates are. The tricky thing about reporting there is that not every candidate is going to fill out that application because it's voluntary, right? Or that survey. So we've been trying to figure out ways to, you know, get more people engaged in that survey. The most recent thing that we've done is actually include it in the application. It is still voluntary and does still say voluntary, but the flow of it, it doesn't feel like an extension and they can click out immediately. It feels more of like something that they would like to enter or be a part of the process when it comes to that. And then we've actually moved where they can also skip the survey. We moved that to the bottom of the survey itself too. So placement of things like the UI UX of it has, you know, helped us a little bit, but it does get tricky. That's the one thing that, you know, I think any organization is facing when they're looking at their applicants. They may not capture every single bit of it. And so that's where we kind of just try to do our best when that comes to that info.
Interesting. Yeah, I was thinking, because we do I think quarterly and on the halves as well, various different trainings, you know, sexual harassment training, unconscious bias training, et cetera. And I was thinking about coupling the survey with that, just saying like, hey, because that's all mandatory. Just saying, hey, as we're doing this training, we want to make sure we're gathering data as well. Could you please build this out so we can, you know, see where we stand from an internal and external benchmark?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good place to put it. I've even done it in pulse surveys as demographic data on the front end. So when you're running a pulse survey and you're asking a variety of questions already, I just do that as part of like my demographic data on the front end. So you can try it different ways and see what works best.
Great. Thank you.
Absolutely.
I have a question. First of all, that was an amazing presentation. I think I came into this meeting today kind of looking for an idea or direction on concrete DEI steps we can take. And it's funny how many parallels there are. I mean, I have never done this before. So I was like really reassured that a lot of what I saw in the presentation we were doing. So it's like, oh, not so bad. But this is great to have it all in one place. Would it be possible to get a PDF of this presentation? Is my first question. Awesome, that's great.
Absolutely.
But we are doing things like a DEI calendar and providing context to some of those dates. I know in all of our interviews, we sit up a little straighter when it's a person of color and we're like kind of rooting for them, you know, but doing things like changing the language in our advertisements is interesting and new. It's not something that we've thought about before. I guess I would ask just, is there training that we could take, you know, to kind of solidify some of these efforts and make sure we can compare how we're doing against a standard for DEI and diversity?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many trainings out there on DEI in general. There's a long list, and that's something that I could definitely include. I mean, LinkedIn has, if you're already on LinkedIn Learning or your company already has LinkedIn Learning, there are so many great videos on DEI just there alone. Like, you don't have to go very far at this point. So there's a lot of learnings there alone. That's actually where I first started. It just piqued my interest. I already had access to LinkedIn Learning at one of my companies. And so I just started to look up those learnings, and there was already a lot that I took away from not working with different consultants and learning from the different consultants that I've also worked with in the DEI space. But I would always say, start there. That's a good place to start for DEI information and to see best practices.
And I think somebody also kind of broached the topic a little bit, but you know, we're doing a bunch of things around diversity on the team, but how do you approach or how do you attack diversity within the leadership of the company? You know, because as much as our leadership wants us to handle diversity, they are just a bunch of white guys, right? So how do we approach that? Like, how do we handle that?
So what I've done before, so my previous role at Princess Polly, it was mostly Australian. Everybody was Australian, very few people of color there. And so what we started with were these very informal one-on-one conversations with each of these leaders for about an hour. And we created a list of questions and we said, hey, what do you know about DEI? Where do you want to support us? What are you interested in? What do you even know remotely about it, right? We started asking these questions and piquing their interest. And that conversation then rolled into, okay, so we learned this much about our executives. This is maybe where we should start in terms of activities and trainings for them, because they've already told me what they're interested in, right? I've already got their buy-in. So I started there. And from that point on, then I started to build out, and I started to also do metrics at the same time of our team and our organization. And I presented all of that information to them. And I said, hey, this is where we should be going, right? This is my thoughts and my ideas, and it's based on data, right? This is how we're going to continue to thrive as an organization. And it worked, right? Data plus the anecdotal conversations and data from my interviews with them, those coupled together really drove us forward. And we were able to create a roadmap for the next 2 to 3 years with them.
That's awesome. But I guess I'm also asking, how do we shake up the leadership to include women and people of color?
Good question. I mean, that starts with, what you're looking for in talent, right? Like performance profiles. Are we looking at just blue chip candidates, right? Because I've been there before where they're like, hey, Mary Lou, get somebody from an Ivy League who's worked at all these companies where I know that they're all the same, right? Like, and I had to challenge them and say, look, that profile, it's going to be the same, right? We're creating an ecosystem of the same, right? Do we want to continue to do that? Or do we want innovation and change, right? And the only way to do that is through diverse perspectives, diverse backgrounds, and start meeting different types of individuals, right? That was the way for me to break the conversation, because once I said the ecosystem is becoming very, very similar, right? In the way that we're thinking and we're driving things, they were starting to understand what I was trying to tell them without telling them out loud.
Thank you.
Mary Lou, do you find that those various different diversity focused recruiting firms also help? Because that's, at least for our executive leadership, when I was recruiting, it was like there were no women COOs or CFOs that at least came into our funnel. It's obviously that doesn't mean they're not out there. Have you found that, using those specific recruiters or firms that focus on either Black or minority or women or whatever helps get the what did you call it, the two in the pool type thing?
You know what, I've never really utilized agencies before in that type of sense. I just feel like we know who our underrepresented groups are, right? And we know the resources to find them. So my team goes out instead. I just don't want to spend the money if we already know who our underrepresented groups are. Yes, they do have a lot of connections per se. I've worked in agencies, so for me, it's just like, I know we can do it internally. But if you've never done it before and want more data, then I would definitely go to an agency.
Got it. Thank you. And last question, do you find with, it seems like at least when my company was growing very fast, we were just kind of quick, right? Like, okay, first person we can get that, that looks qualified enough, plug them in. And I don't think we were as concerned about the long-term effects of DE&I at the time. And I wonder if, hopefully, personally for my company, at least, we just closed around a funding. So we're going to be hiring a lot more. So I feel like we have the runway and the longevity to think about it versus just like survival startup mode, which felt like very much like, oh my gosh, we're going to die, plug in a body. Have you found that it's I don't know, it's weird. It seems like should be easier in a smaller company, but I don't know. I don't even know what my question is. Sorry.
No, you're fine. I mean, it is easier because you have less ropes to jump or hoops to jump through to execute some of this stuff, right? It's just knowing where to go and what resources to utilize, right? There are even different sites like themuse.com. They can help you. They have a platform as well that I've reached out to them or connected with them in the past before, and they focused on women before, but they have a more diverse audience now, and they can help you with anything from job postings to creating branding to also creating content for you, right, in their newsletters and people who sign up for their newsletters. So if you need something faster and quicker and have the means to do it, I would say utilize a resource like the Muse to be able to do something very quickly if you needed to.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I feel like for a lot of our jobs, it's not that hard because we're targeting just kind of mass, a lot, like it's a younger crowd and whatnot. But anything that's been industry specific, like Matt's one of 3 Black men I know in our industry. I'm sure there's more, but it just seems like it's part of it's just like how many people are out there. It seems like a problem that I'm interested in kind of finding those pockets and pools and getting the word out a little more to the right audiences.
AC, one thing that I found fascinating was the fact that the focus of Consumer Track is around all underrepresented areas. A lot of times, even within this group, when we're having conversations, it can oftentimes just be solely about race. But then when I go through the list and see what they're addressing, like there are so many underrepresented communities that we may or may not think about, but it's important that you have that diversity from what I'm seeing, that diversity in conversation is critical because it's beyond just race, it's beyond just gender. And I was fascinated by what you've all done. One other thing I wanted to ask, so I know Myrna is on the call, and there was a reference made of, Lunch and Learns and Myrna being a part of it. And I believe, Myrna, this is the first call you may have attended with us. So what I would like to do, Myrna, if you could just introduce yourself really quick, and maybe you can talk about the connection with Consumer Track and kind of how all that came to be.
Hi, everyone. I wasn't planning on putting my camera up, but I'll do it just because the shout out came out. But welcome. I'm so happy to be here with everyone. A little bit about myself. My name is Myrna Durrami. I am the founder of Myrna & Co., which is a tech translation for the modern business coaching firm. So being a woman of color and a woman just in itself in the world of tech has just been an interesting journey. And so how I even was brought about with Mary Lou was through the women of MarTech, because they were inquiring about bringing in people for these lunch and learns. And I was like, I'd step up to the plate, absolutely. And so we had a wonderful conversation with her organization just about the nuances of being someone who is in a marginalized community. And I just happen to be in one that's just intercrossing several different areas. So it was a great conversation for sure.
And would you say the Consumer Track audience was engaged and could you feel the passion and how did that all go?
I definitely felt the engagement. I mean, they were chatting up a storm in the chat. They were asking questions because that's usually the telltale sign. Like if people are asking questions, then they're engaged. And I mean, we actually went off track of some of the things I guess that we wanted to talk about because the conversation just kind of went there. And it was a great convo for sure.
Right. And Mary Lou, was this, where did the Lunch and Learn concept come from? I mean, was this something that, was new to the organization or had been there for a while? Like, how did that all come to be?
Yeah, so we knew that our teams love Lunch and Learns. We had different Lunch and Learns like a Living Richer series where we were also teaching our team members about financial literacy and how to become financially independent. And so we had a lot of attendance and engagement already, and they were also asking for it on the Pulse survey. So we knew what they were already interested in. So we figured, okay, this is a great way to introduce diversity, equity, inclusion into our team as well, right? And it was another way that they were already engaged and we knew that they were engaged. So we just happened to pull all the people in our network and started to reach out to all the different speakers or just people in the industry that we knew. And a lot of people like Myrna, we were grateful because they shared a lot of their experience as being a woman in tech or an Asian American in tech and media, and even in the intersectionality of their experiences, right? And celebrating and understanding those too. And it was such a great conversation. Even, Jeff, our president, and Brett, our CEO, engaged in the conversation on, in every one of our lunch and learn. So people see, and it's part of who we are as an organization. So it's been helpful for us 100%.
Great. Any other questions?
Some questions. Mary Lou, thank you so much for your presentation. It was really interesting to hear sort of a case study of how you found a lot of success and put a lot of these best practices into action. First of all, I guess I'm curious how big your organization is. I think bandwidth is like a really big piece to this puzzle. And if you don't have folks specifically in roles where they're able to either own this work or take on a portion of this work due to bandwidth, like how do you go from there? How do you start when there isn't a specific role designed to own this? So I guess that's a two-part question. How large are you, and how would you recommend sort of like working around not having a specific role created to manage this? Because I mean, as you just filled out, it's a lot. There's so much to be done. And so, yeah, I'll pause there.
Yeah, so there are about 130 of us at Consumer Track. And it was important for us to have a committee. That's why we have a committee partially, because we split out some of this work, right? Because I'm one person and I can't do all of this work myself. And so that's why I have team members who are on my strategy team and help me with like the resource library and building it out, right? That's where we started, and that's what's been most helpful for us. And we've got more people who are engaged, and we have more champions of change, right? So it just kind of was a win-win for us to have that diversity, equity, inclusion committee. And if you put it out there, there are going to be probably a good handful of people that would raise their hands, especially today and what's happening in the world today. I know that there will be some volunteers who will spend, a couple extra hours working on it, even if they have to after hours.
Thank you. And then the next question I had is, when you are functioning off of this committee structure, as opposed to like an expert in this role, I'm curious where you're getting all of your content from. Is that content that you're creating internally? I know you mentioned before LinkedIn Learning and things like that. Are you, when you're having all of these trainings and lunch and learns and things like that, are you developing the content yourself, or are you going externally for content? Where's that content coming from?
Yeah, so we're right now, because we are small, we're going externally for the content. So we're utilizing, different consultants or different groups or different speakers that we know of in our network to help us with the content as of right now. So that's been super helpful for us. I know that as my team continues to grow and to build, that will be something that I can focus on. But as of right now, that's why we're utilizing external. But for me, I've been creating my little playbook for a while now. So that's why I can go back to some of this content and build upon this content and just do the research on how to update some of these things.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing, Mary Lou. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anyone else?
Matt, there's a couple of comments in the chat that we might want to address as well. Not sure if you saw it.
I'll just say this because I just added to what Mary Lou was saying, just based off of my experience with working with a lot of the companies I've worked with. On average, whenever the DE&I component element gets brought up, A third of people will literally like jump on the opportunity to be engaged. Another third are like, we're open, we're interested. And then you'll have maybe the other third that'll probably be like, we didn't even know there was an issue or something that we needed to address. So knowing that there'll always probably be a few people in there that will definitely want to take on the initiative. So it's just something to put out there.
Great. Sean, was there anything else specifically?
Well, you know what, one of the comments that I loved was that Scott brought up is as far goes sometimes being extremely direct. Again, Mary Lou, I think she was so, not political, but so nice in her approach at times to make sure that she handled it with kid gloves. I mean, sometimes you have to be more direct where if the, again, C-level people who are making those final decisions understand that it's going to positively affect their top and bottom lines, then they will react and they'll respond. Outside of that, it becomes a kind of a division or a movement that's outside of them or something that sounds nice. Okay, somebody on the team take care of it. Just, you know what, again, you have my approval, but in essence, I'm just somewhat disconnected from it. However, when what you can do is you can bring it into their wheelhouse and make it where they are much more interested if they know that it's going to affect their top and bottom line, if it's going to expand their reach to others across the board, because they just don't think about it. Honestly, at the end of the day, the fact is, and I think, and AC brought this up very well, is the fact is that sometimes you don't even know if you that you even have an issue because your friends are who you are. Your friends are your friends. You're comfortable, you're happy. You just don't know that you're maybe excluding others. So I think that, I guess, so that would lead to another question. I guess that was my comment, but here it says a question for you, Mary Lou, is that at some point, do you find yourself having to bring out the big guns or the big charts that really show people and it kind of hit them between the eyes saying, if you really make this a positive priority for your company, you will be able to move mountains. Do you have those charts that really say that?
Yeah, I mean, I would say I just even share stats with them, right? And it doesn't even have to be my company stats. I share things like, hey, we think about retention, right? How much does it cost us when somebody leaves the organization, right? And if we thinking about that, if people are experiencing bias, they're 3 times as likely to intend to leave their company within a year. How much money are we spending on those folks, right? So that's already cost that they're already worried about. There's different statistics that I've shared like that. Or let's say employees who experience belonging at work report a 56% increase in job performance, 50% in drop in turnover risk, and 75% reduction in sick days. That's what our managers want to hear. They're like, oh, really, Mary Lou? They're going to be happier. They're not going to call in sick on the regular basis. Like, that's the stuff that you want to share with them in order to move those mountains. It doesn't even have to be a chart. It can be statistics, and these are statistics from the Center of Talent Innovation. What I just mentioned to you is from the study of Harvard Business Review, right? There are so many statistics and data out there that you can share with them to move those mountains for you already.
Great. Well, Mary Lou, I cannot thank you enough for sharing this information with this group. The foundation of this is to really be able to have open conversations and to be able to share information for others to learn about, what they can do in the area of DEI. And I thank you, so much for you taking the time to put all of this together and to present this to the group. And hopefully this, helps in terms of just creating the foundation that companies need in order to be able to continue to move things forward. So thank you very much. Obviously, you're more than welcome to continue to stay on. We've got about 5 more minutes. What I wanted to make sure that we did today, because there's obviously been a lot of new developments with Women of MarTech and Leads Council, is that I wanted to allow Kathy and Melissa to at least, give an update on what's going on with Women of MarTech, and even Rob Seaver, if you wanted to say something, Rob. But if Kathy, are you on?
I'm here. Yes, I was hiding my face. But now I'm showing. So
Great.
Thank you, Matt. And thank you, Mary Lou. That was amazing. I joined a little bit late and I'm planning to watch the recording because I feel like I missed a lot in the first few minutes where I wasn't there. So I know we're short on time. So the really exciting thing is that Women of MarTech is now August 4th. We are officially part of Leads Council, where we really were like on July 1st, but we hadn't talked about it a lot publicly. So last week, we had the town hall where we answered pre-submitted questions to Women of MarTech members. We got a lot of really great questions, expected questions. You know, one of the questions is like, why is the Leads Council board all white men, right? So I'll just put that out. That's been the toughest one that we have had to deal with. And thank you to Penny, because actually one of the Women of MarTech steering committee members keeps bringing it up. And Penny's done a great job as a representative of someone who's on the board of really just explaining that's not the long-term plan, right? That there have been a lot of changes and more to come, and Women of MarTech, along with the DE&I subcommittee, is part of how we make that happen. So really a lot of amazing feedback. This one woman sent kind of like a passionate email to me, one of our Women of MarTech members, and I just responded back to her with the same passion, and she's like 100% sold, on board, ready to go. So I'm really excited about everything that's ahead and the opportunity to amplify the Women of MarTech members' voices across this larger audience. I do want to quickly pass to Melissa for just the 1-minute update. She's been working very closely with all the committees, getting them really back engaged because we had to pause for a little bit. So Melissa, time to show your face.
Hi. Okay, I will be very quick. After last week's town hall with the Women of MarTech membership, that was really the trigger to move forward with full speed. I had already communicated with the current committee members across the 4 committees that we operate that the transition was happening. So Myrna is actually on 2 of those committees. So she was really helpful in helping to get that information across. With that, we are pretty much taking a lot of the plans that we had established in March, heading into what would have been our 1-year anniversary in April, and getting to revisit them with more energy, more focus, and obviously more scale, because now we are part of the Leads Council family. So one of those initiatives being a new iteration of an activation that we did last year via social, that was Accept That I'm Awesome August. This year, we are crossing out the word accept and going with Celebrate That I'm Awesome August. And the objective of this is to encourage Women of MarTech members to own, embrace, and encourage the way that they see themselves, the areas where they are really successful. What we identified is that when you compare most professional men and women, particularly in the marketing field, that a woman will typically not describe her achievements with the same fervor and passion that a man would, and that is actually one of the reasons why women feel more timid in raising their hand, and so many things that are related to that. So going back to the question of how do we get more women involved, sometimes it starts with encouraging women to feel comfortable enough saying, I want to be on the board because I'm awesome, because I can contribute, because I can do these things, and I don't feel weird about saying that. So we saw a lot of success last year with Accept That I'm Awesome August. This year it is Celebrate That I Am Awesome August. That comes with a variety of things. And then touching on what Myrna was describing, we will be getting back into some of the Women of MarTech content. 2 of those areas being creating an on-demand library of lunch and learns that are able to be watched in a 20-minute segment that really teach members something. And then separately, having more live sessions that allow for conversations within the various Women of MarTech communities, some of those communities being focused on diversity and inclusion, and others being focused on job and career, and really expanding your professional brand and that professional footprint. So we have some exciting stuff to come. Primarily, the goal for the next quarter is going to be focused on re-engaging current members and increasing the level of engagement and participation, since we did have a bit of a hiatus as we prepared to become a business unit within Leads Council. So I have to remind our members that we are still here. We love them. We have all of the great services and resources we once did. And then as we head into Q4, we could really talk about expanding our efforts in new ways once we've gotten all of our members re-engaged in the areas that they were previously showing a lot of interest and passion. So good stuff to come.
Great, great. Well, thank you very much, Kathy and Melissa. I would encourage one other thing, if possible. You know, this DE&I committee has been a great way to bring people together. And so, you know, if you are able to promote this, you know, committee to your members as well, you know, Myrna, I hope you got something out of this today, and thank you very much for your participation. And, you know, Myrna reached out to me, you know, quite early about, you know, just what is going on, like, who are we and what are we doing? And I really appreciate that, because it gave me a perspective about this, the value that this group is offering. And, you know, I think we can continue to expand this. So
Matt, before we close, I just want to link this all for everyone to show truly how connected the domino effect can be, especially in the areas of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and the importance of our conversations and our community building. In February, we were contacted, Women of MarTech was contacted by a member, Kat Covert, talking about an initiative that her company, Consumer Track, was putting together. They had just done a really great event for Black History Month. They were trying to work on finalizing an event for Women's History Month. And in working with her, helped to create this panel that featured 3 different members of Women of MarTech who work in 3 very, very different areas. So talk about coming full circle. For me to join the meeting today, knowing that Mary Lou was going to be on, it's just so clear that it doesn't take a lot to start to establish those connections, and to now be fully involved in the family. I definitely see the synergies that will exist between the organizations. And what's so relevant is that no one came into the Leads Council meeting today thinking, I am here because I am focused on generating leads. And that elevated mindset and that paradigm shift that we're all experiencing and was part of our profession is just such a testament to our 2 organizations now working in tandem.
So Rob, we're going to take that soundbite and use it everywhere. All right. Well, we're over time. Thank you again for a great conversation, everyone. Look forward to continuing the conversation next month. I hope you all have a great month, and we'll see you later.